working hard to achieve 4 goals at the same time. The first is to make the very best biochar. The second is to use as much of the process energy as possible. The third is to eliminate as many emissions as possible. And the fourth is to make the whole process as profitable as possible for everyone. No matter what biomass we put in, we get out carbon. This is how we really mean to take a bite out of our carbon footprint. Good stuff.
What are we talking about delivered and installed with all of the auto?
I gotta go. I'll see you later.
Every unit is a custom fit, really. That's how I would start to say. So you can't, he can't give you a number. And
what is the question?
The question is, how much does it cost to do this?
Yeah.
If you want to
take one home.
And that is really, it is really hard to answer, because what my company, New England Biochar, that produces the machinery, has had to do is create a program where we start out by coming to your site. We'll look at, does it make sense for you, first of all? Yeah. I'm not gonna sell you one of these. I don't have time to just sell you one of these to make money. There's too many people hounding me that are gonna really use them. Mm-hmm. I have made the mistake in the past of selling them to people who just use them for lawn ornaments. And that really irks the daylights out of me. If I'm going to go to all this trouble to make one of these systems, I want it running. I want it sequestering carbon and making biochar and growing stuff and heating things and using the energy and all the things that I've designed into it. Otherwise, I get insulted. So I pre-qualify everybody that wants one. And I heavily pre-qualify. I mean, I'll give you real general numbers. But it's going to be a matter of me sitting down with you, looking at your farm, where you can use the energy, where your feedstocks are coming from, where your biochar is going to go. Because in order to look at it economically, you have to define all of those things. Mm-hmm. It's not just how much does the machine cost, because it's not just an appliance. One of the main factors in the cost of running this is the labor. My guys are brilliant, but they're very well trained now, and we're still, all of us, especially me, learning more every day about how to do this and how to do it better. So it's an ongoing cost, is the labor. It is labor intensive. Unfortunately, we're working toward automating the process a lot more so that we can just fill it and let a computer run it. That way a guy doesn't have to stand around and tweak the dials, and it's a big equation, which is why I'm always really hesitant to jump into it. It varies a lot from customer to customer, depending on the heat exchangers and how much of it they're going to do and how much I'm going to do and all of those things. So
you talked earlier about the liquid products, and you said you could give us a list of some of the uses.
Okay, wood vinegar. You want to talk about that?
The other name for it is pyroligneous acid. So if you tested it, you could find it had some acid in it. It's pretty vast when you go into places like Malaysia, Japan, China. They run systems like this to make vinegar, and the reason why is it's a great adjuvant, which means it can be added to other things and make them more easily taken in by plants. So when diluted, the vinegar is a biostimulant for seed germination and production. When diluted further, you can spray it on leaf surfaces and increase biology and nutrient uptake. So the wood vinegar has multiple applications. In the United States, people take wood vinegar, refine it, and they make it into barbecue flavoring, we think it actually has a higher value in growing crops, but it is the stuff. And after he showed me that, I thought, I'm not sure I like barbecue flavoring as much as I did before, because when you think about the compounds, those are a lot of the volatiles.
Where the milk comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're just stockpiling it right now, but the wood vinegar we think could actually be worth as much or more than the char because of its effect. There are places in South America where they're taking the wood vinegar and blending it with fertilizers, and the fertilizers work better. It's almost worth more than fertilizer when it's used in conjunction. They talk about it changing the structure of water so plants can take in water that they normally couldn't take in. So stay tuned. We think we'll have a lot to show there pretty soon. The bio oil that they lit, that's the other liquid product. I think it could probably go into waste oil heaters. They may have to be modified because it clog them up over time, but it's an energy source. The tar, like we said, could be a component of asphalt. It's very similar to what they used to put on railroad ties and telephone poles. Matter of fact, one guy came to me and he says, well, that's organic fence post treatment. Maybe? I don't know how they would certify that, but you could be literally you've already done that. Yeah, so there it is. So that's the great thing. There's so many products. There's the energy products. There's the biostimulating soil building products. Then there's the waterproofing products. There's the liquid for helping plants grow, and then there's the oil for even more energy. So, like I said, when you capture all those at once, that's when we really start to make some changes. And so yeah, I can't get you a bottle of that yet, but it's coming. Yeah.
What's the difference between the source biochar and the CharGrow inoculant?
Okay, so what is the difference between source and inoculant? Source is the word we use for our biochar source product, which is in the bag there, and that's a biochar that has been charged with the biology off of worm castings and composts. The company CharGrow is named after an inoculant I developed years ago called CharGrow Original Concentrate, which is the char component is in there to hold the biology, but we also have microbial foods and substrates. That's the one I had done in these long-term trials, and now you're talking, instead of putting it in at 20% of a soil mix, you can put it in at 2%. So you're delivering the biology even lighter and less amount of it. And that's where I feel like I'll be able to cross into even conventional agriculture. I'll be able to say, hey, if you use the right cultural practices, this tool can cut your costs and improve your yields. And so that's what we call the biochar inoculant. But I do, and I'm learning to change my ways here, because it's really, we're charging biochar to make amendments, or we're charging biochar to make inoculants. In a way, they're all inoculants because of how they affect the plant roots. The granular gray product would be something you would add to conventional or organic potting soil. Yeah, it would just be in the mix. And there's some companies have asked about that where, they already supply potting soil. I would put my, it'd say improved with CharGrow. Yeah. Okay, an inoculant is and when I say it, I mean a biological inoculant. So when a plant is growing, it's making photosynthate. About 50% of the photosynthate it makes, which is, you can break it down as simple sugars and carbohydrates, about 50% of that photosynthate, they know, goes into the roots. Makes sense, you gotta have strong roots. People tracking that also went on to look at what comes out of the root. About 50% of what goes into the roots, the plant puts out continuously. And the reason why it does is it's trying to get its infection sites on its roots infected with beneficial microbes, such as mycorrhizal fungi. So mycorrhizae is what I'm trying to get to grow on that root hair, because the mycorrhizae have the enzyme systems to be able to bring in things like phosphorus and water during drought. And so these inoculants are ways to get the biology right next to the root and get it to survive there. Things like compost tea and liquid products, often that contain the biology, don't last very long. because the sun comes out, or like on a golf course, the next fungicide went down and wiped them out, and so you got to spray again. When you get to this granular form and you have it inside the char, they're kind of in these safe harbors inside the char, and when things get bad outside, yeah, you might kill off some of the population, but then when the root exudates are there again, they'll hatch back out. So you can really increase the efficacy of inoculants, or the efficacy of the biology, by giving it a place to live and keep coming out. So when I say about inoculants, I'm talking about inoculating biology onto roots. And you can also make inoculants that inoculate biology on leaf surfaces too. But that's how I define inoculant. Did that get it?
About crop production, how would it affect bricks as far as with peaches or sorghum or anything of that nature?
So when you get into bricks, it's a lot about timing. For instance, the Biltmore has great production there, and when you're using organic fertilizers and you're building the biology up, you will get greater sugar content. I did a compost tea demonstration at a farm north of Asheville. When you got the biology right, you're going to get greater sugar content, but you want greater sugar content and a tough grape too. So toward the end of the season, you're almost starving the plant. If you give it too much nitrogen, you get what's called watery berry. It keeps going, but it's weak. It's like overstimulated. And so your bricks is a good measure of sugar content. Like you can use that for measuring sugar content of sweet corn and grapes. We were impressed when we did it up there, is because this guy's, it was his second year of growing these grapes for wine, and his sugar content was already better than the Biltmore Estate. And some people are going, oh, well, it's a young plant and they're always a little better. And I said, yeah, but I know the biology was making it better. Yeah, so it does affect bricks, but you always got to be careful with bricks. As you get to harvest, you don't want too much nitrogen out there. Our first year plant, okay, so he had plants that were in the ground for a year, and we did a biological program with those. Then he had plants that he planted that year that I was doing the project, and I basically told him, I said, I'm going to help you do this, but you have to do the mycorrhizae. And within one season, his new plantings were as big and vigorous as the plants that were a year older. That's a difference the biology can make. So we had the mycorrhizae inoculant on the roots, then we were spraying fungal foods, building the biology up, and that one-year plant was as good as a two-year plant. So that just shows you what you can do. So that's the first thing I would do with that guy. I would make sure he's got the mycorrhizae. If not, get it in there, and then you can do spray programs with beneficial microbes. And every vineyard guy is a good sprayer. Usually he's got some nice equipment for that.
Which product should I feed to my chickens if I just wanted to feed it to them to go ahead and get the biology in there?
When you're feeding char to chickens, you're not feeding it for getting biology in at all. You're feeding it as a digestive aid. So that's straight char at that point, and it's just sized. Bob actually does this. He's shipping char to some chicken farmers. They feed it.
I sell it to people who do it.
Yes, he ships it to them. And there's a bunch of papers on it. In Europe, 90% of the char made is fed to livestock. And it increases digestibility, feed conversion, reduces mortality. It just goes on and on. He told a great story this year where the one farmer he was shipping it to, they ran out. And they had been using it for 3 years already. And they were like, they forgot what a nightmare their life was when everything stunk so bad all the time. But it actually reduces the odors and the manures. Chickens, we did some trials in New Jersey at like 0.1% in chicken feed, and the chickens were actually flipping the feed out of the way. They knew what they wanted that char. And so that kind of char is straight char, and it would just be down to the size, probably a 1/4 inch and less. Let's see, we have another question.
What about us?
I would recommend everyone have a form of biochar in their medicine cabinet. There's actually something called activated charcoal. Yeah. It's made from wood, and that would be as if we took our char and subjected it to 1200 degrees steam, which opens the pore spaces even further. So ours would give you a little bit of benefit for us, but a better benefit would be the activated carbon. And again, it's not a food, it's a digestive aid. So if you ate some bad sushi, drank a little too much beer last night, activated carbon.
But it's not something you would want to have in minute amounts in your own gut. Daily.
It's not gonna stay in your gut. You will not digest it.
So you would
It's passing out. And it's funny, up till about 3 years ago, and because I've been researching this, it kind of blew me away. Charcoal was a approved feed additive by the feed industry. And then 2 or 3 years ago, they went, wait a second, it has no feed value, which is true. By itself, you're not gonna get any feed value. But does it help digestibility, detoxify? Yes, all that. And so I called the agency. There's like a board and a council that looks over those things, and then they advise states who set the laws on what you can feed. And so it's no longer a feed additive. They just crossed it off. And but then I talked to the guy who's head of that board. I'm like, okay, so what happened here? Okay, yes, it's true. It's not a feed additive, but it doesn't affect nutrition, but it grows a better animal. And so they said, well, veterinarians can use it because they know how to use it. I'm like, but all these farmers know how to use it. So it's no longer a approved feed additive, but yet can be used to increase digestibility. They call it cascading influences. Yeah, it makes a better output from the cow, and then that has a better effect in the field. Yeah.
We had like 5 feet of snow piled up around his chicken houses and stuff, and the ventilation was having a problem. And as soon as he ran out of char, he realized you couldn't walk in the place without your eyes burning from the ammonia.
Right.
And the char soaks that stuff up. And what's ammonia? It's a nitrogen compound, right, that we want to get back in the soil, not in the air. So that's one of the ways I look at char all the time, is that it's sorting things out. It's taking the carbon from where it does bad things to where it does good things. You know, it's taking the nitrogen and holding on to it so it stays where we want it to do good things, and not letting it flow through to the groundwater where it does bad things. It's a chemical sorter. It's one way of looking at it.
The other question that I have is usage in a much more specific way, in terms of, well, we're all getting a 20-pound bag, right? So that 20-pound bag could be used in a small, I was talking to the guys in the greenhouse, and he was saying, you know, I would put it per plant rather than, it's almost a homeopathic thing. To put it, broadcast it in a field would be crazy.
I would say that too, because in the field where your plants aren't, why give the weeds the advantage? You know, for the same advantage. You're trying to get your crop ahead of everything and give it the most advantage. So proper placement does that.
Depends on what you're starting with for soil, first of all. If you've got really good soil, you can add up to 10% and you're not gonna hurt anything. 10% is like the cutoff. You never would want to put more than 10%, and that's by mass, which is about 30% by volume. It's a huge amount. So you can put quite a bit in there, and the more you use, the more likely you'll see results. But once you get up to the level where it's that dense and black, you don't need to keep adding it.
It has a life of its own at that point.
It stays, yeah. You've built it up.
One more question, and then I think we're going to have to end.
Just curious with organic certification stuff, any problems, OMRI listing, the way that you're sourcing all this stuff? And
There's a bunch of chars now listed under OMRI, so they're approving it. Basically, we're not adding anything to it. We're actually pulling stuff out of wood. So if anything, we've cleaned it and made it into a filter. So yeah, so far.
I just know certifiers like them. I mean, they got.
Oh yeah. We meet NOP standards.
Okay.
and that's the standard for the compost and the worm castings that we put with the char. But char is approved as long as you're not adding some strange chemicals to it. Some companies put phosphoric acid with it to make it activated. That would probably kill the certification. Yeah.
But you don't steam activate yours. That's what I was asking.
A little bit of steam
Just
happens.
from here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not saying we wouldn't go to
Not
that
a high
someday.
enough temperature to really call it activated.
Would it take longer to inoculate it,
It
with more
helps,
pore
but it's
structure?
not something you could label.
With there's more pore structure, you can get more biology into it. That's for sure. I don't know how the timing would be. Activated carbon is pretty amazing stuff. Stuff rushes in at high speed. So it might be if we had activated, we might be able to inoculate faster. But that's all going to be relative to everything
You
else.
and I have
we're
been
doing.
arguing about this for quite a while.
Yeah,
The value
years.
of activating, and neither of us have had the time to prove it one way or the other.
Okay, I want to thank you all for being here. Thanks for coming. Have fun.